Maria Alexandra is a 23-year industry veteran, stylist, and owner of Salon Aloe in Northern Virginia. Today, we're going to hear her story, all about how she got to where she is, opening a salon, and we're going to hear about exactly how is she running her salon. Welcome back to the Hairdresser Strong Show. My name is Robert Hughes, and I am your host. Today, I'm with Maria Alexandra. How you doing today, Maria?
I'm doing really good. Thank you. Yes,
Good.
thank you so much. Yeah. My husband said I can't say thank you for having me. I have
Okay.
to say something else.
Okay, yeah, I mean, you can say what well, I wanna start by saying thank you so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate you taking the time to share your experience with us.
Of course,
Uh,
I'm super excited. Yeah.
Good, good. Okay, it's cool. So why don't we just start in the beginning? Did you, go to hair school? Did you do an apprenticeship program? And give it kinda let's get the ball rolling there.
Yeah, so I did not go I didn't do an apprenticeship, but I basically started out as a shampoo girl. Um I was about 15. My parents and my family and I had just moved here from Puerto Rico. And a girlfriend of my cousin's actually worked front desk at a salon that was hiring assistants, shampoo people. They needed someone to wash hair. And she happened to mention it. And I happened to be in the room when she said it. And I've always thought it would be cool to work in, I always wanted to work in fashion or something image related. And I always really liked to make money. So I was like, you know what? I can do that. I can wash hair. I can, whatever. And so I went in and they gave me the job. And after that salon, I worked at another salon, and I did that all through high school. And I always thought I would just end up pursuing fashion. Um, but then I started to sort of develop almost like I always had kind of like a knack for talking to the clients and having a consultation. And the first salon owner would always let me kind of play with that. She would always kind of let me, include myself in her consultations and make suggestions and that kind of thing. Um, which is really funny because I feel like that's really still my favorite part of talking to the clients is sort of like designing what we're doing, and that's really where we get really excited. But anyway, yeah, so I did that, and then let me think, after I worked at that salon, I graduated high school, and I did a little bit of psychology. I went to community college, and I took some psychology classes because, of course, again, working with people. And like I said, I always sort of thought that I would end up going somewhere else and doing fashion or going to fashion school. But my mom actually was like, she saw that I had this like natural knack for doing hair, and that obviously I had already been working in hair salons. And she was like, I really think that you should consider going to cosmetology school, and then maybe you can work and then see sort of like where it takes you. And so I did. I ended up going to cosmetology school, and I hustled. I worked as an assistant, did cosmetology, did hair after work. Then my friends would have their moms do, the sisters would get the hair done. Whoever happened to be at the house, we would have these like late night hair parties that were exhausting. But I was whatever 19, so I had making money and just doing my thing. And so then I ended up meeting my first sort of like salon owner boss, who put me on the floor as a licensed stylist, and I worked for her for almost over 10 years. Um, and I learned a lot from her. She's still an educator now to this day and a salon consultant. She's, that's her thing. Her focus has been helping salon owners and mentoring stylists and other business owners. And she basically took me under her wing when she was at the beginning of really establishing her salon, and I learned a lot from her. It was a really great experience. Um, and she specialized in bridal. I was terrified of doing bridal. I got to watch her just be in her element doing those things, and that sort of like intensified the passion for hairdressing for me. And then I ended up having my first baby. And so during that time, I I really was kind of thinking about, okay, I'm going to be a mom, and I would like to have a little bit more control over my time. And I just didn't see, how I could um, do that while being an employee. It just was really difficult. Not to mention that had already started to think, because our industry was changing so much during that time. I want to say it was like 2015, 2016 that I sort of started to see this shift in how we were working.
So
Um,
let me jump in. Sorry.
yeah.
Let's go back for a second. One, where are we at? How long? When did you first get into it again? So to kind of figure out how long you were
Oh
working
my
in the
gosh.
industry until
Yeah.
you decided about ownership.
So I was, let me think. It was, I'm trying to think. So how long? Gosh. It was maybe about 10 years, 10
Okay.
years
Okay.
of,
So
of
10
me being
years.
behind the chair.
And how many salons? Different salons?
I had worked at two salons as an assistant, and
Okay.
then as a licensed stylist, just one.
Okay. Got it.
And actually, it was three salons as an assistant because that's a whole other story. Someone sold halfway through me being there, and I worked for the new owner. But yes, but all in all, I consider it really two salons, really, because I wasn't in the other one for long. I was like,
Oh,
this isn't
interesting.
aligning. Yeah,
So you were somewhere where you're an apprentice and then it got sold.
yeah,
So
yeah.
did that impact your apprenticeship program?
Well, so I wasn't really apprenticing, I was just assisting. I was like just a shampoo girl. And the salon owner was someone who, she had been looking to retire. She was already she was just ready to retire and was tired and sold it and didn't really communicate it to the staff. I think she told her like top earners, hey, by the way, this is happening. So they kind of knew, but like everyone else who was like support staff or whatever didn't really know. And she actually stayed working in the salon as a stylist, until she really was ready to retire. And it's funny, Rob, because every once in a while, I actually still run into her. Like she's still like local, and she's literally like I don't want to say maybe like 100 years old, but I randomly run into her in like a Home Depot or like it's happened to me a couple times. And I've been with like people before, and I always go up to her and like say hi. And of course, she does not remember me at all, but anyway, but yeah. So she sold the salon, and I, kind of like stayed with the new owners, and I just was like, this. I don't know for whatever reason, it just wasn't the vibe for me. It just wasn't aligning with like I just wasn't used to them, and I don't know. It didn't have the same energy and the same feeling. And I just was like, I don't know if I like this. So I left. And shortly after that, I ended up finding another salon that, ended up working out for me. I learned a lot at that second salon as well as an assistant. The stylists were really established and they were super like successful, and they were providers. They were real providers. I mean, they had homes, they had families, they drove nice cars, and they had good schedules. The salon owner took really good care of them. And that was like really the first time that I saw how successful you could be behind the chair, was really working at that salon as an assistant, and understood the importance of having systems in place and customer service and that kind of thing, which is really rare, in my opinion, honestly. But it was a good experience. I learned a lot, and it definitely influenced, how much I started to develop kind of like a love for the industry, really. And I'm still friends with a lot of the stylists there. I still talk to the owner. We still friends on Facebook. We have good relationships and all of that. And so, but really, at the third salon, was where I was on the floor and I started to really become a successful stylist. And I put in a lot of work. I was super dedicated. I only had one focus, and it was just to make money. You know, I didn't care about the drama. I didn't care about who was doing what. All I cared about was hitting certain numbers and making that paycheck that made sense to me. And I had a lot of fun doing it. And I mean, honestly, it sort of, I know I was there for 10 years, but it sort of happened very fast how that flow of business just started to naturally come. And I always think that it's because I had so much enthusiasm behind what I was doing, uh, and so yeah, so I was there for about 10 years, almost a little bit over the 10 years. And so during that time, we saw a lot of changes in the trends, in the booking times. I think at one point I was taking clients like every 30 minutes, which is, well, because you know what it's like. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's not doable. It doesn't really work. People get pissed off. We are running behind all day. It's problematic. And even it doesn't matter if you have front desk, if you have assistants, you can have two, three assistants. I had one assistant later on, much, much later, when I was like, okay, in order for me to make this a sustainable thing, I talked to the salon owner and I asked her, I said, I need help. I need an assistant. And I don't want someone who I'm having to share with everyone. I want someone who's going to be by my side so that I can, I want to be able to maximize and hit these numbers, right? But I can't do it alone. So she, understood, and she helped me. She was like, okay, she had an academy, a cosmetology school. She also owned, and she was like, why don't you just go over there and interview one of the girls who's getting ready to finish, and maybe she can be your assistant. And so I did, and I got a bomb assistant who became a really good friend, and we're still friends. And since then, she's left. Now she works at she's actually over at a salon in New Orleans, and she's a very successful stylist. I went to visit her a few years ago. But anyway, so and even with the assistant, I basically kind of like told myself, I said, okay, now I have help. Now I have someone with me, right? Now I can do an experiment. Let me see if I can really hit these numbers and how I feel about the work that I'm doing. And I was already kind of starting to, kind of like think about the idea of what would it look like to not be a commission stylist, to maybe work not staggering appointments and do that one-on-one service. People are coming in with pictures from Pinterest and Instagram, because that was during the time when things were changing and people wanted, like what's her name says, the balayage or the balayage or whatever. And I'm like, I can't do this in 30 minutes. It's not
Right.
possible. And so I started to go, I always was super into education and taking classes and signing up for things, and always finding, the best, fastest, easiest ways to do things, right? And so I remember during that time, I took so many classes and actually went to see painted hair. This was like a couple of years before I had my daughter, and that was like sort of like the first time that the session work and the long appointments, one-on-one appointments, concept was really shown to me by someone who was actually doing it. Was Painted Hair Patricia, And so I went to her class, and she said something like, I opened the salon. I had this idea to have commission people. It didn't work out. So I ended up doing these sessions. I take these 3 appointments a day. She said, if I have to do more than that, I'm not happy. I charge this much, and this is what I do. And I was like, someone's doing it. Someone's doing that thing that I've been sort of fantasizing about. And she really introduced the idea of, you can actually do this session work and take these, sort of like more advanced color applications and turn them into the thing that you do. And so, so now that I knew that someone was out there doing it, and I had seen it, right? I was like, okay, well, I'm not ready yet, so let me work with the assistant. I loved, I felt really good as an employed stylist, as a commission stylist. That's the truth. I never felt like I said, the environment didn't really affect me so much. If I got along with my coworkers, of course, there's things that you see that don't really align with you. How it is working with a lot of people, and especially in our industry, we got all kinds of freakiness happening all the time. But I felt valued as an employee, so it didn't really have anything to do with that. It had more to do with just, I felt like there was a different way to do things, and I needed to explore that in order for me to feel fulfilled as an artist or as a, and then also successful, because then of course you also have to make money, right? And so, once I found out, that I was going to have my daughter, my husband always was like very supportive. Um, he was like, "Why don't you, just," he would encourage me to work for myself, and I just would always be like, "Ah, yeah, but I'm not quite ready." And I so then I sort of tried to become an educator. I worked for a very short period of time right before I found out that I was having my first baby. I became an educator, and we did some trainings, and I got booked to go into some salons, and it was under L'Oreal. And I just was like, yeah, I don't know that this is really the vibe either, for whatever reason. And so I just didn't see myself going to work for a brand as an educator, having a baby, trying to still sustain the amount of clients that I had. I just didn't see how I was going to make all of those things work. I didn't think that I could do all of those things really well, at the same time.
Totally.
And so, yeah. So yeah, so then, I decided, okay, now I'm going to be a mom. I I know that don't I know that my time, is going to be the most important thing, and I want to have control over my time. So how do I do that and still be an employee and still do all of these things? I just didn't see how I could do both, and so that's just, that was the time. That was the time to do it. And it wasn't easy, because then I had something really crazy happened when
Yeah.
I decided to go and work for myself. I actually ended up turning the basement of my house into a salon. My
Okay.
husband helped me with that. And I want to say maybe not even 3 weeks after I delivered my daughter, I was like already taking clients.
Wow.
And yeah. And so so it's scary, right? Because you don't have maternity leave, right?
Right.
This industry, you don't have that. Having to tell my salon owner that I was leaving and that I was taking, that I was going to open a salon in my house, because I was very upfront about that with her. I didn't really go around, I was very careful about how I delivered that news, and I didn't go around promoting it because I'd been there for a really long time. I didn't think that it was the right thing to do, So but I still was very upfront and very honest about how I was feeling, what I was planning on doing. It's not easy conversation to have, but she was understanding, and she always knew. I know she always knew. We still communicate to this day. She totally understood, where I was at, and so but yeah, so 3 weeks later, I'm like, okay, I don't have an income. People are actually starting to request appointments. They know I'm on maternity leave, but they're starting to request appointments, and like, it's the first time you do anything on your own. It's very uncertain and kind of scary. And you're also eager to kind of get it started, to just kind of test it out and see how is this going to feel and work. And so I started taking clients, and then it was
Hold on, I got
like,
a question.
yes,
Did you have your baby like kind of in a bassinet next to you while you were doing hair, or did you have someone
no,
watching the baby?
no, no. I had my family. Thank God
Thank goodness.
they came to the rescue. Um,
Because that's
and
the
it
other
was
thing
almost,
is like, how do,
how do you do it? Yeah.
yeah, we don't have kids yet. And I'm like,
How do you do
how
that,
the
right?
heck do people do this?
Let me tell you, it was really hard, and I don't recommend it. And to be honest with you, my salon owner, she was like, "What? You're gonna what? Do hair at home and you're gonna have a baby? Like, how are you gonna do that? Don't do that." And she actually made a suggestion to me that was a great suggestion. She was like, "Hey," and I don't blame her for doing it. I mean, me now I would totally offer this to someone, just another alternative. She was like, "Why don't we come up with a different pricing for you? Why don't we just give you your own pricing where you can focus on doing these, like, elevated services, and then just come and work a couple days out of the week." It was a great option,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, but it's also like that old saying, excuse my language, but shit or get off the pot, right? I mean, it's like
But
what
you
do you
know
do?
what?
Do you want to be a business owner or is this like just a whim? And it sounded like maybe that was what you needed to do to get to that to where you're at now, maybe.
I mean, look, I'm gonna tell you, this is what I always say. Once somebody like has this idea that they want to do their own thing, first of all, it's almost like impossible to get them to drop that idea. It's always
Yeah.
gonna be there, you know. And I had already, you know, becoming an educator, trying to be an educator. I actually had done an e-commerce website, like a shop, like a fashion, because again, I like fashion. I did that, you know, and again, I couldn't really do that and also be you know, fully book stylist, successful, doing all the things. Did all the things, you know. Um, and I'm glad that I had that experience so that I could see what it was like to really have a business and all that goes into it, right? Like the marketing aspect. That's, you know, I always thought I would be doing something in fashion and marketing. Like I love those two components, right? And it's funny because now as a business owner, and I'm learning so much about that. That's really what like gets me super like excited, you know?
Yeah, and it's such a big important part of
It's the most
running a
important part.
beauty business.
I think it's almost the most important. I mean, all the other things you have to surely have to deliver a good service, right? And all of those things
Right.
are there's so much, you know, we know, but it's the marketing piece is super important. And if you really don't like to do it, then just don't even have a business, you know?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
unless you can, you know, of course, have a whole other person who does it and it works. But
So I got a question.
yeah.
So I think I love your story. What we got so far is your story of your training, getting on the floor, and then kind of button up against going out on your own, but
Hmm.
also with like the realities of having building a family, and
Yeah.
so something in there, and then now you're a salon owner, and I think that we should talk a little more about your business and your ideas
Yeah.
behind business in the next time we talk. But just to kind of like wrap this up a little bit, I
Hmm.
are and tie it off. I wanted to ask. You said you made a statement about what is it? What did you say? I can't remember exactly what you said, but you said something about wanting the flexibility. It was about your time being a business owner, but you've also like said multiple times that you like to make money. And so what I want to do is I want to like for everybody out there,
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if you're going to say the same thing that other people said. So I'm going to make sure to ask you in a way that doesn't give you the information. It's really hard to not ask you this question without giving
Uh-huh.
you information, but um, how long did it take for you to make the same amount of money as a salon owner as it did as a behind the chair stylist?
How long did it like how long
So,
did it
like,
take
let's
me
just say
to
hypothetically you were making $150,000 a year behind the chair. How long did it take as a business owner where you were taking home that much money?
Oh
Were
my.
you able to transfer like immediately, or did it take some time until you were able to? Because like, there's operating expenses, or did you just like crush it from out the gate?
Let me tell you what's crazy. I was just talking about this with my girlfriend, who's also one of my renters, right? Who's been a friend of mine and a stylist for years. I always say the year that I went to working out of my house after having my daughter was the year that I was rich. That's the
Oh
year that
yeah,
I was rich in my life because my overhead was so crazy low.
totally. Oh my gosh,
I
yes.
had no rent. I had no assistance. I had like really, I was using like maybe Square. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
All right. I now product cost was still, you know, like I switched my color line to Pravana. It was a great price point. I think at the time, not even $6 for a freaking 3 ounce tube of color.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
Nice.
So and you know, and here's the truth. Um, yeah, so I always say that was the year I was rich. I took my parents on a vacation to Jamaica with me, okay?
Nice.
It was awesome. My sister and I did. It was awesome. I had paid for their meals, everything. It was awesome, okay? And I could pay my taxes, by the way. So let me just say that year I could do all those things, and I paid for my own health insurance, okay,
Mm.
out of my pocket. And my husband was a contractor for the government, but that for that he's a federal employee, so now we thank God we got those benefits. But at the time he was a contractor and didn't make sense. Whatever benefits, didn't make sense. It would have been a better deal for me to just pay for us to just pay, out of pocket, and we did it, and it was like a breeze. So that year, and then at the time also Instagram wasn't still super saturated with so much of that, so like people could still see the content. So I ended up getting a lot of new business. I tapped into a market in the area that the hijab women that want privacy. I had people asking for those service for color services that didn't want to be in a salon. So it was like this whole new group of people, this whole new demographic that was looking for that particular one-on-one, very sort of special experience, and I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to stop saying yes and working. So I worked like crazy. So the first year was the year that I was rich. And but let me tell you, even with all of that money, I was so burnt out, and it was
Totally.
so difficult to sustain that, you know? I I made a million mistakes during that time because of that burnout that I was in, honestly. So I made the most money that I've ever made, till even now as a salon owner, because salon owner, you start to invest and you don't really, and you start to learn and you start to, you know, all overnight, all of a sudden now you have to know how to run a real like business, right? So, but that first year, even though I had all that money and I was successful in that way, I could not sustain it, and it was very difficult, and I wouldn't recommend it. But I learned from it. So, um, you know, but yeah, so little by little, I understood that I had to sort of like scale back a little bit, and even with all of those things, you know, and me knowing, I was like, okay, now I know I don't have to worry about anything because I looked at my books. I was busy, and people were I the demand, I had really good demand. And so anyway, but I still didn't feel fulfilled because like me, what I knew from the beginning, it doesn't matter that this is so good. I can't be working out of my house forever. It is not for me. I was not fulfilled.
So how
I
long did
knew
you work out of your house until you
two
got
2 years,
okay?
2 years.
And how'd you find the place?
I just, so after that second year, um, I kept trying to figure out why is it that this is making me feel this way. I don't know what it is. And I'm also I'm also really deep down, a very private person. So having a group of people coming into my home was a stretch. It was definitely a breach of my boundaries in a
Mm.
way, you know. But I had to kind of like get over it, to make it work. And I'm like, again, it's what I felt I had to do at the time. But yeah, but I ended up going into a salon suite, and I did that for some time. I had some other opportunities actually, but that's just what felt right to me at the time was, let me just try this out of the salon suite. And the salon suite provided a little bit of that space right between work and my home, and
Mm.
it also kind of like forced me to really give myself so almost like office hours, which I desperately needed that, to feel normal again and not be in that weird burnout, and to be and also I actually had started doing some therapy during that time, because I was like, how is it that all of these things that should feel like I should be content with and happy, what's going on with me, right? That's making me feel so unhappy and so not fulfilled. Like, what is that about, right? And so I started to understand a little bit more about, uh, uh, you know, not having boundaries in place, how being so productive for so long, sometimes you sort of like end up identifying with that so much that you don't even realize how much it's impacting your self-esteem. And but you need to rest, and you need to prioritize your well-being. And why aren't you prioritizing your well-being? Like, what is all of that, right? And so I started to learn a little bit more about that, and to really see things in a very different way. And so the salon suite experience was great for that. It's what I needed at that time. And then we had COVID, and so
So it was really good for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. And then okay, so you got your salon suite, you got your physical boundaries. Um,
yeah.
well, now your salon, you have a full like chair rental salon, right?
Yeah.
Do you have
So
any commission employees?
no,
Okay.
not
Okay.
yet, not yet.
Okay. Okay. So how long were you in the suite before you got the salon, and how did that salon, like, how did you find that salon?
Oh my gosh. So I'll tell you, since the time I had started working from home, that I knew I wasn't going to be working from home forever. But then I saw the amount of people that, would call for appointments and all of that. I thought, well, if I have this many people that want to come in, and I need assistance, and I need all the things, how we normally work in a salon when you're a commission size. I thought, well, I need space, right? I need the space. And I started looking for commercial spaces, and dealing with that. And it was, a pain in the ass. It was a pain in the ass. Sometimes brokers, male brokers, they don't even, if they know that you're a female trying to open a salon, they won't even talk to you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Not
I
cool.
No, I ran into a lot of things. I was just telling one of my renters the other day, I had the craziest conversation on the phone with this guy who wouldn't show me a commercial space because he couldn't believe that someone was crazy enough to want to go into another space where were three other salons. And I said, well, do they have like a non-compete? Like, what's going on? Like, and he's like, no, I just don't know why anyone would want to do that. So he's like, so
Oh,
if you want me to show you a space, here are the locations. And it was like somewhere not in my area that I'm just not even interested in going to see. And he wouldn't. And so because I didn't say, yeah, show me that space or whatever other space, he literally was like, you know what? I don't have time to help you, and hung up on me. And it's not
oh
the first
my
time.
gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. Like, I'm getting business advice from the broker whose job is really just to let me
Be
sign a
a
lease, right?
broker.
Be a broker. Right.
Is he
So
a
I'm
landlord?
like,
Maybe he was a
yeah.
landlord too.
Right. I'm like, okay. So, but it's not the first time, so anyway, so it's a pain in the ass, and it's very risky. And, it also takes, it takes a lot of money. So your finances have to be in place. And so, it can be really scary to jump into that without knowing, whether or not, you're going to actually make it work, right? So, but yeah, so that was that. And so I, for the past, like, after I left, after I decided to stop working out of my home, I was like, okay, I wish that I had heard of this before, where people had a spa and would sublease certain spaces. And, I sort of started literally almost like saying out loud and praying. And like, I wish someone would come and say, hey, this is available. We don't really know what to do with it. Here you go. For like 5 years, I had been dreaming up this scenario, right? And so, because it was just the easiest way for me to sort of like run that experiment, right? Let me see what it would be like to, be in a leadership role. I have so much to offer, I feel like, because I love what I do. And I'm just like, I'm so determined, right? And I also have been able to sustain a certain amount of demand and a certain amount of sales for a long period of time, right? Which is really difficult to do. So I thought, okay, here I have been able to figure that out. So I could probably help someone else do that, right? And and then see where it takes me. And so I was like, okay, you know, one day I'm at home and a girlfriend of mine happened to share a post, and those were the spa owners that I ended up meeting who had the salon space that they had fully built out, and they were getting ready to open, and they had had some flops and some, sort of like flaky agreements with some other salon owners and stylists, and and I had so many connections in the industry because my sister's a stylist, my best friend who I've worked with for years is a stylist, plus we have all of our friends in our area who were now interested in renting. um After COVID, they all almost had this like epiphany, like, oh my gosh, we need to have control over our lives and our times and our cash flow. And so I was like, okay, well, you know, and I was getting ready to have my second baby. I don't know what it is with me and having these babies that like I think it's a good idea to make these crazy moves. But anyway, so I went in and I had a conversation, and I think that they were just like so excited to have finally found someone who cared about taking on something like that, who was willing to do it. And it was risky, because again, I was getting ready to go on maternity leave. But I, had a conversation with my sister about it. She was game. She was down. She was like, it's a beautiful location. They have built a really beautiful business. And yeah, and so we ended up signing a lease, and little by little I've been sort of like in that process of establishing myself in that way, in that new role. And I still am learning so much. I still have, so so I always joke and say that it's this experiment. I'm running this experiment. But like last year I ended up working with so many different business coaches. I think I hired 3 different business coaches last year, and one of them was Lexi Lomax, and she was the one that was like, "Hey, by the way, guess what? You're not really running an experiment. Stop calling it that because you're literally doing it. So I know that you're doing it. I hear it in your voice when you're talking to me. You're doing it. So you can kind of like let that thought go." And she really kind of like was like, "Yeah, okay, okay, you're right." Like, and so and since then I really have been thinking a little bit more about the direction that I'm trying to go in. And again, I'm still unsure, and I'm still testing it out, but I've learned a lot about what it is to have a booth rental salon. I don't necessarily think that it's the most profitable thing to do unless you have a ton of space. So I wouldn't really recommend for anyone to go into it thinking that they're going to make a ton of money, because you just don't. That's the truth. But the obligations aren't so extreme. Now, if you want to be, if you want to provide something for your renters, and you care about it, which I do, then of course the amount of work is different. The commitment, what you learn, what the amount of time that you put into passing along this information and wanting them to be successful, and wanting for them to stay busy, and that kind of thing. If you care about those things, then obviously it's a little bit more, and I do. So and so for some of the people, like like my friend that um uh she has totally the right attitude. She's a renter, but she's still sort of like new in the industry. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend that someone who's still building goes into renting, but she had been doing it for a while. So, and she's a mom. And again, sometimes the renting part is what gives you that control over your time. And so if that's a priority, then maybe that's the option for someone to consider, right? And for her, it's a priority. So she's doing it, but she's got the right attitude, and she shows up, and she's eager to learn. And so I love working with people like that, because then your
Totally.
efforts, you see how it actually impacts and it helps, and then I get excited because something is something that I'm hopefully passing down to them is giving them some results and improving the quality of their lives, and how fulfilled they feel. So anyway, but we're actually now coming towards the end of our lease at the spot that I'm currently at, and it's been a really really great relationship and great time working with them. I have no complaints. I got very lucky, to have had that opportunity. I It's been a really, and it's gone both ways because I've been a really good tenant, I think. But we're coming to the end of our lease, and we're actually getting ready to open our very first separate independent location. And so I'm really excited about that because
Congratulations.
thank you. So that's been in the works for some time, and it, but I think we finally have found the right space, the right place for us, the right location, and we're getting it ready. And so hopefully before the end of the year, it'll be ready for us to go and do our thing. And I think it's the perfect timing because I I'm really clear on where what it is that we have to offer and what I would like to work with and build. So anyway,
Hey, so there's Union Market,
yeah,
uh,
you were telling me about that.
and okay, I guess I might be repeating something, but so
No, tell me again.
the context between Maria and probably should have
Mm.
said this in the beginning, is
Okay.
that I met Maria at Ashley Norman class, and we were
So good.
standing next to each other during the hands-on portion, and we were chatting business the whole time,
Because
and
we're nerds.
yeah. Well, I had mentioned something that I haven't heard anybody do in a rental um, business, and that
Mhm.
is um, a minimum annual guarantee. Now, I had talked to you about membership. I have actually talked to Lexi Lomax about membership based
Mhm.
concepts. However, there's right next to Union Market is La Cosecha. Have you been
Mhm.
there?
I haven't, but
I
you
was telling
mentioned.
you
I
about that.
looked it up
Okay.
after you told me.
Well, the whole concept for the listeners and viewers that are curious, their concept is they want to bring attention to and access to South and Central or Latin American food businesses. And so what they do is instead of having like the rent being like at Union Market is, from what I understand, the rent at Union Market is crazy
Yeah.
to get a spot in there. But if you want a spot in La Cosecha, you have, and assuming that you meet their profile,
Yeah.
what they do is they bring the barrier to entry down for people who might not have a lot of startup costs or they might not have a big business yet. And, but they have what they call a minimum annual guarantee. So, it's still a rental, but imagine, let's just say you charge $100 a week for rent and it comes out to
Mhm.
$5,200 a year, just to make
Mhm.
math easy.
Easy.
Well, what if the person is like, hey, can I get like $25 a month in rent? You're like, no, because I need to, like, I got bills to pay.
Right.
You probably couldn't do this for that many people. However, you could potentially, if you want another experiment,
Yeah.
um, you
Yeah.
could have like one chair that you do this in, um, but what it would be is they pay their $25 a week.
Mhm.
I'm not saying
Mhm.
these numbers for the
Right,
record. These
right,
are
right,
not the
right,
numbers,
right,
okay?
right, right. Yeah.
So they pay like $25 a week and say 10% or 20% of sales revenue. And they have to prove it to you, so they have to give you printouts of their like Square thing or whatever payment system they use. And then when they cut you your check, so it's part of rent. It's $25 plus 20% of sales. Um, and that's a way to get people through the door that might not have a
Mhm.
clientele yet or a
Yeah.
brand, but it also has a higher upside. So like, if someone gets busy and grows, then you might make more than $100 a month.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I've never
It,
said that on air, and I wanted
I
to
liked
share that.
I think I love those kinds of ideas. I had a renter who she was with me for I don't know, maybe about 6 months, and again, she was right out of beauty school, really wanted to start doing hair. She had 5 kids and 2 of them were severely autistic.
Wow.
She was in a really kind of difficult situation with her personal life and all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so we ended up working out a deal that was very similar to what you're mentioning, and it worked out for both of us. I think it was a super generous thing, um, because it allowed for her to, kind of like get her foot in the door. It ended up working out well, but I think in the end, I think I think whatever was going on with her in her personal, it was just too much for her to sustain, like taking on a new career in that way. Doing, I think color consultations were a little bit stressful for her. And it was just too much, I think, for her to handle at that time. But the arrangement worked out well.
Yeah.
It kind of gave her that flexibility that she needed, kind of allowed for her to lose that fear, and it also just got someone else in the salon that could, um, work. And sometimes, it was enough to pay the rent and for several weeks because she was busy enough. So it was a win-win. And I love that kind of situation. And I don't think that enough people do that because they're so afraid of like having a renter who pays a percentage and, that kind of thing. But
Well,
um,
yeah, so that is actually so this specific structure is already a known structure for renters. It wouldn't work in the membership model without significant lawyers and probably new technology that doesn't exist yet. But it's a but I forgot there's one piece that I forgot, which is the most important piece. So everyone
yeah.
listening, so you give them a reduction in the what would the rent would normally be with a piece of their revenue. So say 25% of what your normal rent would be and 20 or 30%, I don't know, of revenue and like total revenue.
Hmm.
And then at the end of the year, if they have not paid you at least the 5,200, if you're assuming $100 a week, then in order to renew their lease, they have to pay you the difference.
Oh.
So you still getting $100 a week. It's just you're giving them a lot of runway to build their business up. If they
Oh,
want to renew, you can
wow.
say, okay, well, you it looks like your first 6 months. I don't know what you were doing. It looked like you were sitting on your hands, but the second half of the year, you really came back. So I think you're doing good. But unfortunately, your numbers you missed the 5,200 annual guarantee. Uh, so you owe us $1,000 to make up the difference in order to
Oh,
sign your next lease. Now and then, but that's also a point of negotiation. So if they're
yeah.
like, I don't want to pay $1,000, be like, okay, cool. So then we're gonna go instead of $25 a week, it'll be $50 a week with 35% revenue split. But it becomes they become you have the ability at that point to renegotiate. They probably don't want to leave, but you might not want to
Yeah.
leave them to leave because you can see their revenue potential. Or maybe they'll just be like, you know what, I'll just start paying $100 a week. And you'll be like, sweet. It cost me $1,000 this year, or whatever the number is, to invest in
Yes.
a long term lease. Or maybe they have to sign a 3 year lease, and you'll void their thing. I don't know, but
Wow.
your options open up significantly because you kind of end up at the situation where you're like, hey, I have a business and I have to think
Yeah.
about the business first, and
Right.
that means that I can't have people just like not paying what they need to pay in order for me to pay, do what I need to do to keep this
To
business.
keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, you want a roof over your head and you want like shampoo bowls and whatever.
Yeah.
There's a cost to that, and I'm not doing it for free, so I need to make profit. Because like there's literally no point in running your own business if you're not making profit. You might as well just go to a suite, and so like
Right.
that
Exactly.
yeah, it's like I mean it's called capitalism for a reason. People need to make a profit, otherwise it's
Yeah.
called the value proposition of business. If like how let me give you an example. Are you comfortable telling the audience what you spent or ballpark of how much money you had to have to open up the next location?
Oh my gosh. So I tell you what, this is what I know. Like my husband and I, to the if in order for me to grow my business and to really be able to comfortably do with peace in my soul and in my heart and my mind, I decided, I was like, you know what? I am going to sell my house. I'm going to sell my house. I sold my house.
There you
Okay.
go.
Just so that we could, because, at the end of the day, would I necessarily recommend? And actually, Lexi told me this. She's like, do you have to sell your house? And I'm like, I don't have to, but I think that it's probably the best thing for me to do right now, because my priority isn't to keep my house. My priority is to provide the best way that I can and to continue to grow. So
Okay.
holding on,
Boom.
yeah. So
Yeah.
holding on to my house really doesn't align with the prior. I don't really love my house to the point where, and it was hard for me to even explain this in the beginning to like people that were close to me, because they were like, "Wait, what are you doing that for?" But I mean, that's not really the only reason why I decided to. But in order for me to position myself in the place where I had as many options as possible, that was what I was looking at. So
So, okay,
now,
so that makes the point right there. You don't even have to give a
yes,
number. Like,
yes,
what is worth it for
right.
a human to sell their house for
Right.
the business? There's
Right.
got to be profits.
Right. Right. And so did I need to absolutely do it in order for me to have peace? I think it was the right choice.
Yeah,
Um and I don't necessarily recommend, if you can't do it with having peace, then don't do it.
totally.
People go in and and let me tell you, by the way, what I'm doing to me is huge. But I'm being so careful. You know what I mean? I'm not going in over my head. I'm literally, so last year I learned this, because, and I think I mentioned this to you at the class. I am starting to meet people who are, using really cool and innovative strategies to run salons and keeping their expenses as low as possible. I literally met someone who's running a full on commission salon out of a 2-chair suite with a strategy, you know? Um, Someone taught her how to do that. There's so much out there that you can do. People sometimes think that you have to have a chandelier in every freaking station so that you can know. What you need is to have something good that you provide, do it really, really well, and understand how to present the value of that to the target people. You don't need, you know what I mean? That's it. And I
Yes,
mean, and there's so much more, right? Because we have to learn about what that really truly means. That's a very simple way of putting it. But you don't really need to put yourself in this huge, deep hole, you know? And I think, I don't know, it was one of the podcasts. I think it was a Gina Bianca. She had someone on the podcast. He talked about making sure that before you start hiring people, to have at least a year's worth of whatever that salary would be, which was, to me, I mean, it was something extreme, right? I don't know at what capacity he's operating. I don't know the type of business. I don't remember
was
the
it
details
a
of that.
barber? Was he a barber?
I don't think so. I think he was a stylist, but I don't know.
Oh,
I
okay,
don't
because
remember
I
his
interviewed
name.
someone, Joe Agnello, from City Image Barbershop, and they're like the largest privately owned barbershop chain in the country, or one
Uh-huh.
of them. And he said the same thing, but he got
Yeah.
that. He said that was from somebody else, but he said that like if you what you're saying. So like to kind of expand in case anybody missed what you said, like if you have like a manager or wait a minute, if you're going to manage a salon, then you need to pay yourself what you would pay a manager so that when it's time to hire a manager, the money is already there or something like that. Is that what you're saying?
I don't remember
Yeah.
if it was exactly
Okay.
that, but basically, yes, to the point, yes. It was just make sure that whatever it is that you are going to need in order to operate, have at least maybe a year of that, so you can be very comfortable. Do you really need to have a year? Maybe not. If you're very successful, maybe it would look maybe more like 6 months. You know what I mean?
Okay. Okay.
Depending
Yeah. A
on
little
what.
different than
But
okay.
but but in order for you to feel peace, right? And so my husband and I were talking about this the other day when we were coming home. It was funny, we were laughing because I was like, I have peace about this lease. Like when I looked at what I would be paying over the course of the period of my lease, the term, it was just that's not a super scary, risky number. I'm not literally going to put my family at risk by me doing that. And so, okay, so what I'm saying is that's what gives me peace. Yes, it's risky to go into and open something in an investment and all that, but the level of risk, if I'm too worried about the amount of risk that I'm taking on and what I'm putting on the line, then I don't have the energy to pour into what I need to do to have a successful business because I'm too worried about digging myself out of a hole. And that's what I didn't want, you know? And so I've learned, do I really need a ton of space? No, I need to be smart. I need to have a strategy in place. And I didn't learn this on my own. I literally, invested in the help and the guidance. Different people looked at, they assessed all three of my coaches. They were like, okay, everyone gave me guidance, but I needed to do that in order to learn so that I could. And and like I said, I'm still doing it. I still think coaching is super important. Education is super important. Learning how to run a business, not just do really good hair. And now I'm able to kind of step back from the chair. I'm working 2, maybe 3 days out of the week. You know, um, I'm comfortable and the amount of in the workflow that I have. If I need to go in a little bit more, I do, but I don't always. And when I'm there, I'm all in. And then when I'm at home, I spend time learning, okay, what do I need to do so that I can operate and grow and move forward. And so if I'm behind the chair all the time, I can't do that. So I had to learn about that as well. And now after these last 3 years of literally sacrificing, because it was a huge sacrifice, even to go in and not have to do a build out, even to work with the spa, you know, I mean, at the spa or at the salon, that space, I'm it maybe like tripled or almost quadrupled the amount of rent that I was paying. Really, I took on that risk, and I haven't always had. So I've subsidized a lot. So I haven't always had renters. You have to build that too. And I literally went on maternity leave right at the beginning of it. But I knew from very early on that it was the right thing. I felt that it was going to be a really good opportunity for me to sort of step into that. So it was well worth it. Um, but now I know you don't always need all of the things. You just need to make sure you can manage and be responsible with your finances and what you're doing, and that will allow for you to have the right energy going into the creative space for branding, marketing, providing good service, providing good leadership, because you're not so resentful about this hole that you've put yourself in.
Totally.
So,
Well,
but
this has been a really great conversation. We ran over, so thanks for
we did.
yeah,
We
we ran
did.
over, but thanks. I mean, thanks for your time. This was so good. So I think I think it'd be really cool to have you, definitely back on the show. But I'm actually thinking maybe we do these IG lives that we call community conversations, and
Hmm.
where we just get on and we talk about whatever topics with local folks, or and if it's not a local folk, then it is something that is directly appealing to a group of local folks. Um, so I think it'd be cool if we got like a little like a few people together and we talked
Yeah.
about like the future of business and the business models and what changes that we're looking, you kind of like something forward looking. But until then, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experience and your insights. I think there's a lot of value packed into the conversation, so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you. Well, if I might see you before, but if not, I'll definitely see you May 19th. So
Awesome. All right. And then
I'm glad you're feeling better.
if anybody's listening, watching, doesn't know what she's talking about, May 19th is the Beauty Business Brunch. It is
Yes.
here in Northeast DC. Panelists, we got an awesome lineup of panelists. We got workshops and then a bottomless brunch, along with some games and giveaways and stuff like that. But it'll be a fun day.
Nice. Yes.
All
All
right.
right.
Well, I will see you then, if not before, and I look forward. I will, and we'll be in touch.
Yes. All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye. Take
Bye.
care.